Hello. Our first knowledge seed around doing management research will be about framing your research. So what is it? Well, it's basically something very simple. It's working on your research question. It seems as a simple thing, understanding what you are actually researching. But as you'll see, it takes a lot of time to get to a properly formulated research question, one that will have value for you, one that will have value for your advisors and your panel, but also one that will have a broader value for others around you, whether it's the academic world or if it is practice and people you are working with, which is especially relevant for an executive DBA. So you probably have a question. Now the question is it a good research question? It's probably good enough for now, but you want to progress it. You want to make sure it's a really good question, and there are many reasons for that. So let's see what are the key questions around the research question, if you want. And the first quick question is, what is a research question? And obviously, what is a good one? The first thing is that it should be specific enough. So let's see a few examples of research question. Let's start with the first one. What is the strategy of firm X? I'll give you a few seconds. Is that a good research question? Does your research question at the moment really looks like this one? Well, if it does, you might want to push it a bit. What is my problem with what is the strategy of firm X as a research question? Well, it's quite simple. It's not really a research question. It's a question enough. I mean, right enough, it's a question. But it doesn't have a strong research aspect. It's only about firm X. It doesn't ask about specific aspects of the strategy. So it looks more like a newspaper piece. It could go in a business magazine, but it's not very good for research. What are you researching in that strategy? Why is firm X relevant, or why is firm X interesting? As we'll see later, it's more of a starting point. Not really a very good research question. Now let's look at the second one here. So this one reads, how does the alliance between X and Y, two companies, contribute to the internationalization strategy followed by firm X? All right, well, it's more specific, right? It's about two companies, there are connections, there are links of causality, How does the alliance contribute to the strategy of firm X? But again, it's very practical. So what we lack here, and that's even the case for an executive DBA, what we lack here is really the connection to something that is broader than just firm X, Y, and X. And it's a bit better than question one because you start to connect different concepts, but it's not there yet. What is interesting in this alliance? What do we know about this type of alliance already? How is the strategy of firm X interesting? Is that something that has already been reported by a lot of colleagues or authors in the academic world? Has it been covered already? Do we know everything about it? Well, if we know in general, if we know of a lot of comparable cases, if we know, if we have built models around similar situations, then it's all news. We don't want to hear specifically about firm X. What we want is to learn something new that we can apply somewhere else, even from a practical point of view. If by doing a simple analysis of the literature or a benchmark, I can achieve the same result, well, not so interesting. Let's look at the third question. The third question, which could actually not be a question. That's a good thing about research questions. They could be research topics. They don't have to be a question, but let's say it's a question. Let's take the interrogative form. So if we ask the question, what is the impact of CEOs' relational networks on international alliances success? The case of firm X. Well, then we have started to lift the debate It's not only about firm X and the little issues of this specific CEO. It's a broader question. There is literature about how the networks of executives will have an impact on strategy, but we narrow it down. We talked about the relational networks, which is connected to a strong body of literature around networks. International alliance success is much more specific than a specific alliance or strategy of firm X. It's a very specific type of alliances. We might push it a bit more. Maybe we want to characterize the type of alliance that can be derived from relational networks. And maybe we introduce in the mix a typology that help us, connect different types of CEO networks with different types of international alliances and their success. But that's much more specific. So you would be looking at a process through which you move from maybe your first intuition, firm X and its strategy. You love this firm, you're a big fan of Apple or Google. You find that internationally they are the very best, or maybe you work for them. But that's not a research question because it's not theoretical enough. Even though you want to keep a connection with practice, you want to generate knowledge that can extend beyond what you have learned from this specific situation. So you want to be closer from question 3 than from question 1. So let's see how we can try and do that. How do we do it? How do I define a research question? And how can I progress it? Well, a first important aspect to understand is that usually what we have when we start a research is actually a starting point. We don't have the full question, and usually it's not because we are dumb or we don't know what research is. It happens to all of us, experienced researchers as well. It's because we need to refine it. We have an intuition. We have something that's interesting. Yeah, we like Apple. We like the way we feel it's quite unique what they have done and the way they transformed, disrupted the music industry. But that's not enough. We want to be more specific than that. So the first thing is to recognize that usually we have a starting point. And it's usually something that we intuitively feel is interesting. There are many types of starting point, and we need to dig, to go, to analyze further, to see where is the really original thing. So what type of starting point do we have? Well, we can have a theoretical starting point. So I'm interested in strategies of internationalization because I've read a lot. I've read, Harvard Business Review papers on that. I've read, that there are interesting cases. So I'd like to work on that. But no, that doesn't give me a research question. I need to do a full lit review and see what has not been researched before. Now, it can be a concrete setting, and that was a previous example. I'm interested in Apple. I really like firm X because I worked there. I did an internship when I was younger. And usually in your case, it would be a specific setting connected to your current work. Obviously, playing on the synergies between what you are doing now and your dissertation, contributing to your organization or to your industry will be very important. So often you have one element in terms of concrete setting. Now, in that setting, it's always interesting and a plus to have a new phenomenon, something that's happening. I like this alliance because it's one of the first co-marketing in this industry. So that's really interesting. And people have studied co-marketing in the pharmaceutical industry, but maybe in my industry it's new, and maybe it's new because it's a completely different story. You don't do co-marketing the same way. Well, but you still have to read about co-marketing. But that could be, something that's happening, a disruption in your industry, in your environment. Maybe it's because the pressure from, let's say, social standards is increasing. The pressure for sustainability is increasing. The pressure for cost reduction is increasing. And people change their business model. Well, let's look at it. Very good idea. But let's check also that theory hasn't done it before. And then another aspect is you have to be opportunistic. what does it mean? Well, it mainly means, from a research perspective, you look at all these things, you know, that your interest, there's a concrete setting, there's a new phenomenon, but you also have to be able to access. Obviously, in your case, you have, you know, a really privileged access to some specific settings. That's your company, your organization, your industry, where you work. So leverage that. I mean, it would be really a shame not to use your direct work environment or you know, your work connection, your work network to do your project. That's a key asset. So what you want to do is you take this starting point and then you try to move it to the next level. You try to make it stronger, to make it better, to make it more interesting. And to do that, well, an executive DBA is a research work. So there's no way around it. You have to do a full literature review and you have to show us, the academic, that what you will do will contribute to practice, but will also contribute to something new in the academic world. We want you to produce new knowledge. So you will deepen your starting point. You will research what has been published around this topic, whether it is international corporations or co-marketing or other aspects. And you will find, you know, what is the sacred grail of research, which is the gap. You want to find the gap because then you'll be able to fill that gap. What's a gap? Well, it's something that hasn't been researched before, is something that's really new, and that you will be the first one to actually analyze. Mind you, often the gap will be very small, and you might have to reduce your ambitions. Especially, that's the case very often for executive DBA, where you start from very concrete things, and so you have to bring that to a level of abstraction where you can actually show a more general contribution. So look at the literature, and that's your first angle. Now the other way to approach things is say, well, I'll find something new if it's completely new, if it hasn't happened before, and that's a phenomenon angle. So look at hot topics, and that's not only through literature, but you know, things that people in your industry discuss, new hot things. So you can talk to people, you can use your expertise, you can use your connection with experts in your industry. It's actually a good way to meet new important people to talk about your research. It makes you interesting as well, because you might bring them new ideas if they talk to you. Look for also reports, business publication, books, Harvard Business Review or other more applied research publications, and find the hot topics. If you already know what they are, that's even better. Then you just have to do the lit review exercise. And step 3, which actually will happen again and again and again, is rewrite your research question. So each time you have documented something with the lit review, well, how does that transform my research question? Does it make it better? Does it make it more precise? And as you progress, you will see that your research question will progress. So don't hesitate to write it several times. You know, if you are looking at a 3-year project, you might have your research question maybe only 1 year down the track. And you might actually change it, tweak it a little bit as you progress in your research. So it's not only about having it right, it's not about having it right the first time, it's about getting there progressively and rewriting, reformulating. My tip on that is really, you know, always have an updated sentence, a 1-sentence and 1-paragraph version of your research question and your research objective. 1 sentence, does it make sense? Can I improve it? 1 paragraph. Present it to others, read it to others, and ask them for feedback about what they think. And keep updating until you're really happy, and maybe until your submission. Now, a few questions to frame that and to help you find the actual research questions. And a few things that, you know, you should answer yes to, because if there's a no around these 5 questions, well, you're probably in trouble, because it means there'll be something not right. So first thing, is it interesting for, and I'm not saying it's a priority because I'm an academic, but it's still important. You have to please to the people who are assessing you. You know that. So the first thing is it interesting for the committee? You know, so people who would read it, for your supervisor. It has to connect with their research activities. So who will be the right person to help you? Will they be interested in your topic? If you choose a supervisor that's not interested, that won't work. So is that something that's worth, you know, supporting from the point of view of your supervisor? Does it connect with their research activities? Can it help them with their work? You know, does it make sense for them? That's important because academics are, you know, overwhelmed, overloaded with proposition of people who want to, you know, work on their research, want them to work with them on their research. We receive emails every day or every week of people from different countries wanting to do a PhD with us. So it has to be well targeted. Don't send it to somebody who won't want to follow you. So is it adequate? Will it interest somebody in the academic world? Obviously, you have to answer to the other objective of the executive MBA, which is, you know, what will it contribute to practice? Will your boss or your stakeholders be interested in the results? Can you write a white paper about it? Can you write a discussion paper that will be presented to your board and that will inform the strategy of your organization? And that's key for access. When you talk to people, you present a research question, if they feel, well, yeah, not so interesting, they won't talk to you. So when you present your research, you have to make sure it's interesting to the people who will help you to actually access the information. And, you know, it's important because you are mainly looking at a non-academic career. A few of you might change their mind. I mean, we have known of DBA people doing a PhD and becoming academics, but a lot of you are trying to inform practice. So obviously that's a key question. The third question is the originality. You know, a good research question is always original. So you want to contribute new things to knowledge. You know, so what's out there? Has it been studied already? Can I differentiate myself from existing studies? And often that's when you find dead ends, but they're not dead ends. So the question is, if I find that somebody has already researched one aspect, what other aspect am I looking for? How can I reframe my, you know, research gap and my research question to make it really interesting, because it will further, you know, the knowledge we have. It will be the next step of existing research. Look specifically at the end of academic papers, where there is very often a section called Future Research Avenues. They tell you what they feel is an interesting topic, and that's a good start. Another aspect is, you know, how interesting is a research question for you? Let's face it, you're going to spend a lot of time on that. You are going to work for probably at least 3 years, and you know, it's a long time. So you have to think about your personal interest. You know, are you really stimulated? Will it be fun, exciting to work on that? And it has to be, because it's already very hard if it is. So if it's not, probably be extremely hard. And the other thing is, how does it contribute to your own career? I mean, obviously you want to reflect, but you also want to yield some benefit from your work. So, and it can be achieved that it gives you an edge. It gives you, you know, the capability to express your thought around an area, to become an expert about something, to meet all the actors around a topic. So it offers you a possibility to network, to become an expert, and then to claim this expertise in your professional trajectory. So it's important also to do that. And the last one is obviously, how feasible is it to answer this research question? Can I do it in 3 years? What type of data do I need? I mean, you want to finish. You not only want to produce things and to collect data. You want to be able to finish in 3 years. And your research question has to be broad enough to be interesting, but narrow enough to be feasible in 3 years. Then if you want to do more, well, do a PhD, and that's fine. So now let's think a bit about you. What I think you should do now, and that's your task before the next knowledge seed, is to workshop your research questions. Take a few minutes, write down the last version, and then think about it. Where are you at? What is your starting point? Rate your research questions according to the, to 1 to 5, 1 being not there yet or not there at all, 5 being, well, I'm there, I've done it, according to the questions below. And use the next slide to assess it. So, have you covered the literature? Are you confident that nobody has done it before? Is there a gap? Have you already conducted some form of exploratory study? Do you know it's a hot topic, it's an interesting topic? Is it original? Is everybody working on it already, or are you the only one? What is your personal interest? Do you really want to do that for 3 years? Can you do it? Is it interesting for my committee? Or, potential supervisors? Will I find the right supervisor? And what impact will it have on practice? So you can use this grid and, assess yourself, and then note every comment you might have that will help you progress. And do it again and again and again until the end of your executive DBA. Well, over to you, I guess.